All right, recording is on. This is the Network Plumbing Working Group meeting for April 26th, 2018. And let's see, we have a fairly short agenda today. There were some spec updates. So the first item there is Doug. Doug, do you want to talk about your spec items?
Yeah, absolutely. So the gist is that I added a section to the spec. I put a comment next to it, but it's like right under the comma delimited and JSON sections. And this is just to formalize some type of convention for the names of the network attachments. And I kind of ran into the issue where when I'm trying to support both the JSON format and the comma delimited format is I don't have like a good rule of thumb on how to basically say, hey, there was an error loading your comma delimited stuff. So I'm like, hey, maybe we should have a convention. So what I did is I based it basically on how Kubernetes says, how do I validate a namespace? Because I needed to have a namespace in there. And I'm like, oh, look at this. It just basically uses its DNS 1123 label format for those. And I'm like, hey, that's not so bad. And then we can just say that it's basically that, units of that delimited by other things. So for example, you know, if you've got kind of like a namespace slash attachment name, you would just use both DNS 1123 label on either side of that slash. I also included in there the idea that so you would use units of that DNS 1123 label, and then you can put a slash in there and have one on either side. But then I also said that you could also use an @ symbol to pack metadata into the name, and that was to support Suresh's idea of the interface name at attachment name format. So I said that you could allow that. So basically, that's the gist of it. I'm curious if anyone has any insight, if it's too wordy in that spec section, or I'm game for any feedback there.
Yeah, the only thing I was thinking of was, do we have, and I didn't think we did, but do we have a more of an explanation of Suresh's proposal?
And you know what? That's actually on my list, is to update the discussion points.
Yeah, because
it wasn't captured super well.
There is an open questions section where I know I talked about it, wrote some stuff there. Basically, I was just thinking maybe until we get that section, or until we have a good idea of how that multiple attachment with the @ would work. Maybe it doesn't make sense to have that sentence to include the @ symbol. But if we think that, or if you think that you have a proposal for cleaning up Suresh's language and putting that in the next couple of weeks, then maybe we could leave that.
I just found that down in the discussion, so I'm just gonna cut and paste my thought down in that section on the @ symbol, and then we can just say to be added if this becomes formalized.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Wait a minute, but doesn't this run into the same problem? The key idea of Suresh's was we're hacking the interface name into the attachment object name, but the attachment object name has to be a legitimate object name. You can't have an @ sign in it.
Without having thought about it too much, I guess I thought that the meta plugin was going to have to do a little parkour on the name and like split those up. But yeah, you know what? You're probably right, because we are going to pass that through as the CNI network name or something like that, right?
Oh yeah, that's gonna require even more ninjutsu to tear that apart. So yeah, I'll leave that down in the discussion for now, because I think that it probably simplifies the case here for the time being to say it's basically a namespace slash another namespace like name. I think that probably simplifies it for now.
And also there was a comment that somebody had added to that section. I don't think that person is on right now. That was asking, let's see here, it was Levent, well, I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name. But it's a comment there. And I was just wondering if, Mike, you could reply to that person's comment with one of your use cases for multiple attachments to the same network.
Help me identify the comment, please.
It is in the multiple instances of the same network attachment name section, which you should be able to get from the menu on the left-hand side, the table of contents. It's like the 8th or 9th item down. And there's the, in this example.
How do you get a table of contents?
Oh, that's a great question. Maybe in the view menu, show document outline.
Ah, okay.
Yep. And you should just be able to click on multiple instances of the same attachment name, and then just right below the example there is a sentence that this person added a comment on. So anyway, it's this person's comment was, is there any functional reason to attach the same pod twice to the same network? And yes, we've discussed that a lot, and we have cases. So I was just wondering if you could add one of your use cases to that comment, and then we could resolve it.
I might be your best source for this, because my motivation for doing it was I'm just passing along a requirement I got from other people.
Ah, okay. Maybe it was that Suresh had.
I think it was people talking about NFV that were saying they need that. Most kind of originally.
Right. All right, then perhaps an action item from this meeting is to dredge up those use cases.
Yeah, I think we're going to need that if we want to actually get a change through CNI based motivated by this. We need to be clear on the actual use cases. And I do still think getting the change to CNI is the best way to solve it, if you really do believe we have to solve it.
Yep, and I saw that issue come through CNI and commented on that already, so I'll bring that up again in the next maintainers meeting and try to push it forward a little bit. And I think, as I said in that comment on the CNI issue, I don't think it's a huge problem for CNI itself, because there's only a couple of plugins that matter in the CNI reference set, but it might be more of an issue for third-party CNI plugins that currently only use that key for uniqueness. But as long as it's a spec bump, then
right.
Obviously that makes more sense.
Right. Did you have an opinion about whether the spec bump should be in the minor or the dot position?
Well, we're contemplating, or we will be doing a 040 spec bump anyway for the get functionality, which should be happening in a couple of weeks. So I don't know if that proposal, the multiple attachment proposal, will gel before then, but it probably makes sense to do a major bump for that kind of thing and some other stuff. So, but I mean, either way, just do the PR as you feel like you should, and then once that gels a little bit more, then somebody in the CNI maintainers team will suggest what the version numbering should actually be there.
Very good, thank you.
Okay. All right, so I'm adding an action item for tracking down multiple attachment use cases. Mike, if you could do a little research on that one and see if you can dredge those up. I'll do a little research from my side too. I know Doug and Tomo and Feng, if you have any thoughts on those, if you've come across those.
Yeah, I mean,
good as well.
I think those are fairly common if you think about things like bonding or you know, that kind of stuff. I think it's when you would need those kind of thing, right? So if you do 2 SRV, for example.
I don't know if bonding is the kind of issue that would surface to a pod, though.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. It might. I seem to recall use cases that were more around obtaining multiple IP addresses from the same network, even if it was over the same interface. You just have multiple IPs.
Yeah, multiple IPs don't require multiple attachments.
Technically, no, you're right.
Right. So it's.
But we had another document, right? We had a document full of use cases with like a couple dozen use cases.
Yeah, I don't know if any of those actually included the.
Yeah, we don't have to research this online.
Yep, that's true.
Let's go back. Let's back up. Okay, and digest it. See what we can make sense of.
And yeah, you know what? We should probably have a link to that other document near the top of our agenda. I'll go back and find that document too and add a link to it so that we all have the use cases.
There were 2 of them, if I recall. I tried to digest some stuff, and so there was the less digested and more digested. So we have I think at least 2 others. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was adjusting the question of services. That's right. So there's just the original, and then there was a thing about services. So yeah, right. One original compilation of use cases, and that was in another document, right? That just included a compilation of use cases. But yeah, let's get a pointer to that fact.
Yep. Okay, I will go track that down. All right. Any other comments on Doug's valid attachment names section for now?
So what is the conclusion here?
The conclusion is that, I mean, we obviously have to restrict network object name or object names in Kubernetes because there'll be actual kube objects and kube validates those kinds of things. Excuse me. And so we kind of have to validate those names in the annotations as well. So does that make sense? So I think the conclusion is that, you know, the section, at least I looked over the section Doug added, and the only comment I had was the @ symbol stuff. The rest of it looked fine to me. So, and again, I mean, obviously none of this document is set in stone. So if anybody has comments after the meeting, please drop them in the doc.
Okay, I just want to make sure that Doug has enough information to proceed with his implementation.
I think so.
Okay.
By the way, a stupid little procedural question. I don't recall being notified of changes to that document. Did you get notified, or did you go looking for changes?
I get emails. I think you can subscribe somehow to it if you're logged in. And then you might be able to.
I am logged in.
Okay. It's a great question. Yeah, honestly, I'm not sure. I get comments in email notifications. Oh, okay. If you click the little speech bubble at the top right, Mike.
Yes.
There should be a notifications button that shows up in that little window.
Uh-huh.
And then there's.
Oh, I've got only yours checked. What does that mean?
I think that you only get emails when somebody replies to a comment you made, or when you reply to a comment that they made, and then they reply to you.
Okay, so I switched it to all. Okay,
yep, there you go. All right. So Doug, that was the only outstanding stuff you had?
Yeah, that was, I just wanted to make sure that looked okay with, I'm happy to make tweaks to it, but I just wanted to make sure that was cool before I started to do an implementation. So sounding good, and awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. So I think the only last bits we had, there was some outstanding stuff about IP request, MAC request that we had talked about a couple of meetings ago. I had meant to go find out what the deal was there, and then think about that a little bit more and make sure that we could support that. Other than that, Are there any other thoughts people have? All right.
Well,
go ahead.
I guess one thing that I guess I could bring up was I had like a passing thought, and somebody had replied to it, but the idea was, could we add a overrides section to the like detailed JSON annotation? And basically, the idea would be that the meta plugin checks that override section and then overrides what's ever stored in the CRD object that it references. So you could say tweak an existing network attachment configuration as stored in the CRD. So, and somebody said that there was like an NFVI consideration for it. I think it was the same guy who made that comment you were referencing earlier.
Yeah, I'm looking at that thread right now. Yeah, I mean, on the face of it, that sounds reasonable. My only thought there is that maybe we save that for like V2 of the spec.
I'm totally with you there, because it is a fair amount of added complexity. So I would say definitely V2 material.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my thought there would be to add it to the previously discussed topics section and then add a decision that V1 will not contain it, but V2 should be an open topic.
All right, sweet. I'll go ahead and add that in there. I'll kind of document the comments so they don't get lost in the shuffle.
All right. And then once you do that, Doug, if you can resolve that comment in the doc, that would be great.
Awesome. I will do that.
Okay. So I think next up we had a demo or a demo update, excuse me. So Feng, if you want to
go. Yeah, so we, group of people are working on implementing the with Motus, and we're thinking about implementing at least a subset of the features in the spec and as a phase 1, and we're hoping to do a demo sometime soon. Right now we're thinking the week of May 18th. That is an off week for us. So the first question is that okay? Is everybody okay with having such a meeting, right? To go over what has been implemented, how the idea is to show how a reference implementation might work, and also to look at where the future is, right? What should we do next, and what's our thought going forward, and also any feedback that we have on the implementation.
And just to be clear, when you say off week, you mean that it would be a sig-network meeting, not a plumbing working group meeting, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So are you suggesting this as an agenda item for the sig-network meeting?
No.
I'm not
want to attend the sig-network meeting.
Maybe we should suggest it, and then if we run out of time, we could like do it the next meeting for the plumbing working group. I mean, I think it wouldn't be out of character to have that kind of demo in sig-network.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay, so you think it would be reasonable to do that kind of demo in sig-network meeting?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Okay, so that's fine. The reason why we didn't do it the next week is because that's OpenStack Summit. So I think a bunch of us will be out that week. But yeah, but if you think it's reasonable to do it in so that would be May 17th. So that's the sig-network meeting.
Yep.
We could do that.
Yeah. I mean, if we can keep it to a reasonable amount of time, then it probably would fit into sig-network.
Okay.
So it's worth a shot.
Okay. I do think we might have to introduce a little more context if we do it in sig-network to motivate a little bit, but yeah, that's fine.
Another thing too is I kind of like the idea of having it at sig-network, and it's kind of good to have some more people have eyes on it. I think that's probably generally a good idea. And the thing is, we can always come back to this meeting and have a deeper dive kind of session on it. Because really, the initial goals of this year is to, help refine the specification that we've got. That's really the number one thing that we want to do. So hopefully it'll contribute to that.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Next up is Ed with network services, but it doesn't look like Ed is on. So perhaps we'll skip that for this time. And I guess just general notes on the spec. It sounds like most of, in general, it sounds like most of the large comments and sections are sort of slowing down. So it seems like we've achieved consensus, at least on most of the points. I think going forward, we should try to set a deadline on when we should come out with an actual formal proposal for the specification, or essentially come out with V1 of this spec so that it doesn't drag on too much longer. And I guess I would suggest that deadline be like about 2 months from now.
That sounds good to me.
If that sounds reasonable. And that...
Why 2 instead of 1?
I was thinking that the language probably needs quite a bit of tightening up, and we need to clarify it. It needs some, pretty intense read-throughs and editing, because there's probably a whole bunch of ambiguity that's currently defined. There's probably some things that are a little bit too wordy.
Adding fancy boards, I think.
Oh, those Google boards?
Yeah, because the one upstairs also.
I'll just mute Bowie for now. So yeah, anyway, so that was the thought. I thought that maybe that would take 2 months, around 2 months for like the back and forth, just so that, when we clean something up, then people review it again to make sure that that cleanup makes sense and actually does what we want it to do.
That sounds good to me too, and also it'll give us a bit of time to kind of work on this reference implementation, so that some of the stuff that we've planned for is backed by some rubber hitting the road to kind of test out what's been specified, which I feel like has been getting tighter all the time, but it can't hurt, I guess.
Yeah, and that was actually one other thought I had, was that, as reference implementations happen, I'm sure we're going to turn up a few more things here and there. So giving those a little bit of time to shake out some of the more minor points would be useful. Does that make sense, Mike?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it'd be awesome if we had something in a month, but I'm trying to play a little conservative on that. So
I guess the question that raises, it sounds like you've teed up a work item that we haven't talked about, which is some significant revision of the spec.
Yeah. I guess I wouldn't call it significant revision of the included features, or...
Right, just rewrite.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, rewrite and heavy editing.
Right, so that's a work item. So
that's correct, yeah.
Who's going to do it when?
I am volunteering to spend some time on it, at the very least.
All right, thank you. I'll volunteer to read it.
Okay, excellent.
Dan, I'll pitch in as well, for sure.
Okay, great, thanks. And obviously anybody else who is interested in helping on that front, either helping to write or helping to edit, read, make comments, please do that.
Sure, I'll do that.
Okay, awesome. All right, are there any other agenda items or outstanding issues or anything else that anybody wants to discuss?
Along that same lines, if anybody is interested in working on the reference implementation, I think that would be great too. So we are tracking all this in the Trello board. So if people are interested, definitely, I think that would be good for everybody to see at least what's going on.
Okay. Do you want to put a link to that Trello board in the agenda for today?
Yep, I will do that. I think right now it's not public yet.
Okay.
I think you need an invite, but I'll put a link there. I'll make sure it's a public. Yeah.
And also, some of the interesting bits do wind up as GitHub issues on Multis, and there's a branch in there that's labeled Network Plumbing Working Group. So, you know, if that's how you roll too, that's another way to get some insight into it. And patch is welcome for sure.
All right, sounds good. And unless there's anything else, we will end early. All right. See everybody either next week for sig-network or 2 weeks for this meeting again.
All right, catch you guys soon. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.